Okay, so good morning everyone. Bore da. My name's Margaret Smith and I'm a mitzvah. And for those of you who don't know, that's an independent domestic violence and sexual violence advisor. Are there any idvas or idzvas in the room? Just one. Okay. So, just a little bit about myself, my background. I worked in a women's refuge, a mainstream refuge, for 8.5 years. I then went to work in a specialist refuge where they catered for women from different cultural backgrounds. I worked there for 4.5 years. I then went to work in the Women's Safety Unit, which is managed by Safer Wales, where I'm currently working, and I've been there now for 14 years. So the unit that I'm working in now, the main thrust of our work is risk assessment and safety strategies. We work with the high-end victims, the high-risk victims of domestic abuse. Okay, so just to let you know, for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to be referring to women mainly, but that's not to say that males can't be victims of domestic abuse, because they can. And we do provide a service to male victims. We've got the Dean Project. Has anyone heard of the Dean Project? A couple of people, yeah, and you'll know that Dean is Welsh for male. So we do offer a service for males. Okay. Now, I have got a PowerPoint presentation, but I decided not to go all through it because I don't want anyone in here to suffer from death by PowerPoint. There's about 30 slides, so I'm just going to talk you through it. But it is in your pack. You've got it all in the pack. Okay. So I thought first we'd start with some definitions, because definitions of older vary. And we've got the Welsh Assembly Government and the UK Government, they define someone as being old if they're 50 or over. And then we've got Steve's office, where they define people being old as being 60 plus. And you and I might define people as being old if we're 60, 70, 80, 90. So it varies. So I wondered if people know as well in this room that once you hit 50, you qualify for sheltered housing. Scared, yeah? So now, just to explain what we're talking about when we say domestic abuse against older women, just the different categories. I've got something I call domestic abuse grown old, where domestic abuse started earlier in life and persisted right through the relationship, a continuation of long-standing abuse or resentment. And then you've got the people whose husbands or partners have died, or they've divorced them, and then they've gone on into other relationships and found that these are abusive relationships. And then the third category is late onset domestic violence, beginning in old age. There may have been a strained relationship, a bit of tension, there may have been emotional abuse, and then as the relationships matured, it's gotten worse as the partners have aged. So those are the sort of three main categories. So what are the triggers then? The triggers, when abuse begins in old age, they're likely to be linked to some of the following. Retirement. Now, when people go to work, they get up in the morning every day, they're interacting with their colleagues, even socialising with their colleagues. They've got a purpose in life, they've got a role in life, they've got structure. And then they retire. And some people find that really difficult to cope with. All of a sudden, they haven't got a purpose, they haven't got a role in life, there is no structure, there's no socialising, and that's when the boredom kicks in and the resentment kicks in, and unfortunately some people will take that out on their partners. And then we've got disability, another trigger. Now, a lot of us in this room could end up with a disability because there's a saying, old age doesn't come alone. Yeah? So that could cause resentment in a relationship. Then there's changing roles of family members, and there's sexual changes as well. But I can't emphasise enough that we don't support the myth of stressed caregiver as an explanation for the abuse. Because you've probably heard it, we hear people say, and professionals say, oh, he or she is a lovely person, they're really well-meaning, they're really nice, and they want to be a good carer, but they're stressed, and so they just lost it. It was just a one-off, and they probably won't do it again. They've not done it in the past, they probably won't do it in the future. There is no justification for abuse, okay? So, statistics. I'm not going to bombard you with any more statistics because Steve gave you some and Joe gave you some, but I can give you my own little stats where we've had like over 500 referrals this year of domestic abuse cases. We do share the referrals with Women's Aid, and out of those we've had 30 older people, and we use 50 as a guideline, 50 and over. So we've had over 30, and that would include males and females. So the sources of those referrals have been hospitals, the police, GPs and self-referrals, adult services and HOVA. So I won't go through the statistics, I just wanted to read you some really shocking recent cases that I got from the Guardian newspaper. Andrew Castle, 61, attempted to kill his wife Margaret in a homemade electric chair. Malcolm Bearden, 79, denied murder but admitted manslaughter of his wife Margaret, aged 78. Ronald Edwards, 65, killed his partner Sylvia after an argument. Kenneth Mann, 81, killed his wife Doreen, aged 80, with 2 knives and a hammer, and then he drowned himself. Leslie Parsons, aged 88, killed his wife Dorothy, then tried but failed to shoot himself. So pretty grim, eh? And we talk about terrorism on the streets, but there's terrorism going on in people's homes behind closed doors. Okay, so now to talk about the prevalence. Domestic abuse is experienced by women of all ages. However, older women are often overlooked. In fact, they're invisible. Some people think that domestic abuse ends at 50 and 60. Well, I'm here to tell you that it doesn't. Older women experiencing domestic abuse have very specific needs. However, these needs, until recently, have been receiving little attention, and it's important to recognise other factors, such as life experiences, that may be more significant than age, and that assumptions should not be made about a woman's situation or based solely on her age. Domestic abuse can be perpetrated to any person in an ongoing relationship with the victim. For older women, this can include a husband, partner, adult child, other family member or carer. But it's important to recognise the difference between domestic abuse and elder abuse. We don't support women who are experiencing elder abuse because we don't want the floodgates to open and be inundated with referrals from hospitals and people who are being abused by carers. So it is specifically domestic abuse with family members or intimate partners, yeah? So domestic abuse against older women may be long-term and have persisted for many years. It may occur in a new relationship, for example, following the death or divorce of a previous partner. Many older women were born in an era where there were few domestic abuse services, and many women did suffer in silence. There were no refuges, no safe havens, no counselling services, no legal services, and very little help from the police. No media coverage. The abuse of women within families was invisible. Fortunately now, gender roles have changed considerably over the years, and what's considered acceptable behaviour may be very different for women from an older generation. Having lived through a time when domestic abuse was not recognised, older women are likely to have a very different perception of what services they can access and what the different support needs are. So what are the effects then of the domestic abuse? There's long-term effects on older women, which are likely to be similar to younger women, but obviously the longer they're in a relationship, the worse it will be. And we're talking about women who've been in 20, 30, 40, 50-year abusive relationships. the effects are likely to be more severe. For older women who've lived in an abusive relationship, the effects can include permanent physical damage, chronic eating disorders, disability, self-harm, self-neglect, loss of confidence, and mental health problems. Now, I worked with a woman who'd been punched in the head so many times over the years, and on one occasion he perforated her eardrum, and she's now profoundly deaf. I worked with a woman who, over the years, was beaten up so badly, so many times, that she's now developed really severe arthritis. Now, I broke my leg a couple of years ago, and the doctor told me that in the future I may have arthritis in that site. So we know that arthritis is not just old age, it could be those injuries that cause her to have the extreme arthritis. Now, also, we've got a woman who's got diabetes, and again, you see constantly on the television, and it irritates me when they keep saying, oh, if you have a waistline of so many inches, you're at risk. If you have an unhealthy diet or an unhealthy lifestyle, these are the only reasons why you get diabetes. Well, you can get diabetes through stress and trauma. I've got a client who developed diabetes after being in an abusive relationship. And what happened to her was that she became so depressed and her diabetes was so managed so poorly that she lost her sight. And then after she lost her sight, she became very, very depressed, and she decided she just wanted out. So she said to herself, I'm going to just stop taking my tablets. She stopped taking the tablets, and now she's had to have her toes amputated. So you can see how one thing leads to another, and the seriousness of these effects. There's a danger that these effects can be misconstrued as a normal part of the ageing process, rather than the consequences of the abuse. In cases where abuse is physical, many older women have longer recovery periods and higher mortality rates as a result of the physical injuries. A study in the USA found a significant link between an increased likelihood of suicide and a history of abuse in women aged 55 and over. It's important to note that older women experiencing domestic abuse may not report increased ill health, despite being very likely to suffer from specific health conditions, such as the ones we've mentioned: depression, anxiety, digestive problems, and chronic pain. Consequently, the risks for older women they face are often heightened, and they're less likely to seek help. So it's important to realise the barriers of seeking help. Older women are more likely to have been exposed to long-term trauma and are more likely to currently live with the abuser, and therefore they're more likely to remain in the relationship. Barriers to disclosing the abuse and seeking help and support are magnified for older women. Older women may have different perceptions of abuse, having grown up in a society where domestic abuse was a private issue and where outside support was not easily available to women. Domestic abuse may only be seen as a physical abuse, and other forms of abuse, such as emotional and psychological, may not be considered abuse. Feelings of powerlessness for women are greater for women from certain generations. Some women feel that they've been socialised to be passive and to believe that divorce was not an option. I mean, how many times have you heard that saying, you made your bed, now you have to lay in it? And then people took their vows really seriously, till death do us part, literally. Older women may not believe that they're experiencing domestic abuse, as victims are often portrayed as younger women with children. And I often get older women coming in and saying to me, I feel like I shouldn't be here really, I don't deserve to be here. You'd probably be better off spending your time with a younger woman who's maybe got a few kiddies. So I have to say to them, no, you're just as important as those women with children. So some older women have been experiencing domestic abuse for many years, and they previously attempted to disclose the abuse but received little or no support, so they stopped trying. And I do frequently get women coming in and they'll say to me, Do you know, 20 years ago, I tried to tell my mother, or my mother-in-law, or my sister, or my friend, and they didn't believe me. So I've never mentioned it again. Of course, then when it gets worse, or something really drastic happens, they're forced to tell. Older women may feel ashamed or embarrassed at having experienced abuse following a long relationship. Self-blame and shame are increasingly powerful deterrents to disclosing abuse. For women who've started a new relationship in later life, they may feel embarrassed to admit that they're even being abused. Now, older women from BME backgrounds, and by that I mean black and minority ethnic backgrounds, they may feel particularly ashamed or embarrassed at experiencing abuse from their partners. Family honour may particularly influence an older woman from a BME community to seek support or not to seek support. Older women from BME backgrounds are sometimes less likely than younger women to speak or understand English, which can make disclosing and accessing support very difficult where specialist services are not available. Now, you may have heard people say about certain women, oh, that woman's been in this country for 20 years or more, so why doesn't she speak English? Now, people need to think about, like, maybe her partner didn't encourage her to attend English classes or wouldn't even allow her to attend English classes, and that is another form of control. So, the blurring of boundaries between elder abuse and domestic abuse has been highlighted as a potential barrier to effective recognition of domestic abuse. Professionals who may normally encourage disclosure of domestic abuse, such as healthcare workers, social workers, they may assume that injuries and confusion are the results of age-related conditions rather than the result of abuse. They may be reluctant to talk to victims, older victims of domestic abuse. Protecting family is a complex barrier to disclosing the abuse. Older women in particular often feel that revealing domestic abuse may disrupt the family, and they worry about their children, their grown-up children's reaction. Fears that they won't be believed or even blamed often discourage women from disclosing. A further barrier which is characteristic of older women is concern for the abuser. Some women fear that reporting domestic abuse may result in the removal of the perpetrator, and where they're of a similar age, there's a worry that they won't be suitably cared for. I'm working with a woman currently, and she's 70, her partner, her husband, is 79, and he punched her in the face, and he roughed her up. And so she did call the police. The police came and they arrested him. They took him down to the police station, but then we had some conversations and the police officer felt sorry for this guy. He said, he's very old, very infirm, he's very frail, he's sorry, he said he won't do it again, so we're letting him go. And I said, no, you can't do that. We're going to bail him back to the same address. And I said, no, you can't do that because he's threatened to do worse. He threatened to let a little dog out who she loved, he threatened to kill a cat, and he threatened her as well. So, after some pressure, they decided to keep him in custody, and they still didn't really know what to do with him. They asked her sons if they'd have him, and the son said no, we don't want anything to do with him. So she's got a grown-up daughter. They asked the daughter, and her daughter's reluctantly agreed to have him. She said, well, I know what he's done. I'm not condoning what he's done, but he's my father, and I can't see him out on the streets. So at the moment, he's living with his daughter. But her and her husband have already had a row about him staying there. So this can only be a temporary measure. So I've said to her that there are places that I know she's worried about where he's going to stay. He needs to get in touch, or the daughter needs to get in touch with a social worker or adult services, and they can find him sheltered housing or a home, a place in a home. They can deal with that. She's really worried and concerned about him being pushed, she said, into somewhere that he doesn't want to go. I said, but he was more than happy to let you go, because that was the first thing the police said. Oh, I think you'd better go, love. I think you'd better go and stay with someone. Have you got any family? Have you got any friends you can go and stay with? And that is often the case. They always ask the woman to go. So that's just, one of the cases we come up against on a daily or weekly basis. To care for an alien spouse is more important than escaping the abuse in some cases. Women who need care or companionship believe that no one but the abuser can talk to them or care for them. Once an older woman has recognised that she's experiencing domestic abuse, seeking help can be very difficult. So what about the process of seeking help then? Older women may be even less aware than younger women of the services available and may think that they're aimed at younger women or women with children, as we've mentioned. Women brought up in an era where private family matters were not discussed may feel reluctant to seek help. Accessing services requires revealing details, which many older women may feel uncomfortable talking about. Revealing information that should be secret can be exacerbated feelings of shame and embarrassment, particularly for those women who already feel that they're to blame for the abuse in the home. Older women are more likely than younger women to have health problems or disabilities, which can make seeking help increasingly difficult. Leaving a house that's been a home for many years may be particularly difficult for older women. The prospect of leaving a house, a community and support network is often very daunting. Some women may have lived all their lives in the same community. They may not be willing to leave the area and all their friends, and this is a particular problem, as you may find, in rural areas where it may be impossible to resettle people anonymously. I'm working with a woman currently who has been asked to leave, advised to leave, because her grandson is abusing her. And she said to me the other day, "Why should I leave? I was born in that house. My mother was born in that house. And my grandmother was born in that house." So she doesn't want to leave. But her grandson, a couple of weeks ago, pinned her down on the floor, tried to strangle her and tried to bite her nose off in a drug-fueled incident. Older women may have caring responsibilities for elderly relatives, dependent children or grandchildren, which makes seeking help very difficult and the prospect of moving very daunting. Older women may be financially dependent on their abusers and have no independent form of income, which may discourage them again from leaving. While adult children may offer women support in seeking help, others may create further barriers. Some adult children may encourage their mothers to stay in the abusive relationships or even blame them for the abuse. I've been working with a woman whose son is very supportive. He brings her along to appointments. He patiently waits in the waiting room for over an hour. He never stopwatches and says to her, "What time do you call this? I've been waiting here for over an hour. When are you coming out?" He's brilliant. He's amazing. But her daughter is a nightmare. When she told her, my client told her that she was coming to see me, she said, "Why are you going to see that woman? We don't need that woman. Why are you talking to that woman about our private, personal business?" She's very unsupportive. So the dynamics in families are so different. Refuge accommodation in particular may be uncomfortable or inappropriate for older women, too noisy, too chaotic, too many children, too stressful and inaccessible for women with disabilities. Now, before I started this work, I did my own little bit of research and I phoned all around Wales trying to find a refuge specifically designated for older women. There aren't any. So something needs to be done about that. Specialist services need to be developed which seek to overcome the barriers such as designated refuges. Once help's been sought, older women may face particular issues which discourage them from accessing services. Some older women may care for older male children who may not be able to be accommodated by refuges because, as we said earlier, not all male children are disruptive and uncooperative and supportive, and they would maybe want to go with their mother or their grandmother, but they can't go into refuge because males can't go into refuges. Once you hit 16, you're a man and you can't go into a refuge, so there's a conflict there. Further problems may be faced when older women are seeking rehousing if they have particular access needs or require supported housing. Outreach services can be effective for older women to access services, and we do go out and see women. They don't always come into the unit. If women can get into the unit, all the better. If people physically can't get into the unit, we'll send a taxi to pick them up, bring them in and take them back. Or if women are comfortable meeting in a neutral place near to their home, we will arrange to see them in a herb community centre, a GP surgery or a health clinic, that kind of thing. So what are the interventions? What can we do? What do we do? What can we put in place? We provide a listening ear. We believe the victim. We don't assume that stress, dysfunctional family communication, anger management or substance misuse are the case of the suspected abuse. We assume that it is power and control until it's proven otherwise. We focus on victim safety and we avoid colluding with the abuser. We identify the victim's strengths and skills and we build upon them. The victim should have an opportunity to talk about their personal beliefs and values and how these beliefs impact on their decisions and ultimately their safety. We offer hope and we focus on offering strategies that promote victim safety. We try to break the isolation cycle because it's a classic where someone will come in and they are very isolated, where they've not been allowed to have friends, they've not been allowed to go out and attend certain activities. So we try to break that by encouraging them to join in activities in the centre or to sign up with our Recovery Toolkit programme, which is a pattern changing programme. We will signpost them on to other activities in the city as well. So we recognise and respect cultural and religious differences, language barriers, and value the differences that create challenges. We understand and acknowledge the importance of holidays and rituals from a variety of traditions. For example, we wouldn't phone someone on the day of Eid because that would be like phoning somebody on Christmas Day. Okay. So we recognise that the victim may want to maintain their relationship and help the abuser. I had one woman who was abused by a partner over a long period of time, and we managed to get her housing, and she wanted to take him with her. And I had to go into a long explanation then about, no, that's not what this is about. We want to get you away from him. You don't want him going with you. So, again, those are the kinds of things we come up against. The victim may have previously reached out for help without success. Some victims may not trust workers or their suggestions initially, so we've got to take out time to build a relationship with the victim. Now, when I see clients, on the whole, in general, we spend about an hour with them. We don't stopwatch, but we say an hour roughly. But when older women come in, I set aside a morning or an afternoon, because obviously they've got a longer story to tell, and they might talk a little bit slower, and you've got to listen, and you've got to have patience. So that is what we do. We support any decision that the victim makes, and that may be staying, leaving, or leaving and returning to an abusive relationship. You've got to go at their pace. We understand that some proposed interventions may make things worse, temporarily or permanently, and they could compromise the victim's safety. So some examples of that would be maybe calling the police if her husband's a retired police officer or police officer, or getting in touch with somebody, a faith community leader, if the abuser is a pastor, a reverend, a rabbi, or any other spiritual kind of leader. We don't make any statements that blame the victim or imply the victim is responsible for the abuse, or for not stopping it, like, oh, what did you do to get him angry, or what did you say to wind him up? And we do hear people saying that. Not just friends and family members, we hear professionals making comments like that to people. We avoid labelling the victim as codependent, uncooperative, weak or helpless. These labels do not promote victim safety or empowerment. When domestic abuse is present, couples or family counselling and anger management classes and not recommended by experts in the domestic abuse field until the perpetrator has successfully completed an intervention programme. Okay. We treat older victims as adults with respect and kindness. We don't treat them as children by doing too much for them, talking to others about them while they're actually present in the room or making decisions for them. We acknowledge how difficult it is when older parents are abused by an adult child. Joe spoke about that earlier, that unconditional love thing. We acknowledge how difficult it must be to consider ending a 40, 50 or even 60-year relationship, and we're creative. We encourage safety planning, and we encourage you guys, when you're working with these clients, to take care of yourself. We have regular line management, and we also have clinical supervision monthly to make sure that we don't get vicarious traumatisation. So to sort of conclude, to make a difference, can you ask yourself, can you ask the right question, the right way, the right time, and give the right response? Now, just quickly to say, we do use the DASH risk assessment that Steve designed, and we also use this power control wheel. I don't know if anyone's seen it, and there's a specific one for older people. This is a very quick and efficient way to get someone who's maybe minimising or in denial to see that they're in a serious abusive relationship, yeah? And there's more practical things that we can do as well. We give away safety packs containing information on how to keep yourself safe in the home, outside the home, on the telephone, on the computer. And we give out personal alarms to women as well. And we also give out these little lip balms where the number of our office is there concealed in the barcode. And we give out mobile phones to women who've had their phones confiscated or destroyed. This is a lifeline, and we put a £10 top up in there for them. So that's it, guys.